my name's Cass and welcome to my channel. Another month has come and gone, which means it is time for my monthly wrap-up. I was able to read 21 books, well, 20 books and one novella this month, and I'm honestly kind of shocked because I really thought it was like 15 until I pulled all the books off my shelves and I was like, oh, that's actually a lot. So I was able to consistently get this 20 books some way, somehow. I realize a lot of people ask me, how do you manage to read so much? I'm very lucky with what I do and the fact that I have an hour drive to work. There's lots of audiobooks. And it's the fact that I listen on like 2.7 speed. But that's a whole other story. I tried to read a lot of sapphic books in the month of September because it was Sapphic September, and I'm pretty sure it was 7 sapphic books. I also got through 7 physical arcs on my shelf because my physical arc shelf has honestly gotten out of hand and it's very stressful, so I'm trying to pick through those. And then I also ended up reading 2 5-star reads, and one of them ended up being one of my new favorite books of all time. And I feel like we can all guess which one that is because I feel like it's a very consistent thing. But I'm going to go through all of these books with you guys, that way you know what I read, what I thought about them, and if you think you should add them to your TBR, if you think they sound good, or if you've read them, let me know. I'm curious what your thoughts are as well. So without further ado, let's get into this. That is what is flowing through my blood. My blood type is DP. Alchemised by Sunlit Man. This was Infinity Stars, my favorite read of the month by far, and one of my new favorite books of all time. It follows along Helena, who is a promising alchemist, and this is set in a world between 2 different factions. You have the Necromancers, and then you also have the Order of the Eternal Flame, who believes in preserving the body and despises the use of necromancy. When Helena wakes up with the last few years of her life missing and the rest of the Order of the Eternal Flame gone and perished, she ends up getting sent to the High Reeve, who is known for his ruthless tendencies and just a brutal necromancer and one of the highest ranked in their faction. While she's there, he is tasked with uncovering her hidden memories because they believe that she is hiding some deep vital secret to the Order, and they are determined to figure out what it is. This book was breathtaking beyond belief. When you're going to be looking at the world building itself, was just phenomenal from every single aspect. You are getting this world that's created from alchemists and necromancers, and you are seeing this foundation being built, and it's only a standalone, so you're getting so much, but it's so detailed as well. When you're looking at these characters and how they are built upon, and you are looking at the journey that their characters are taking, you are realizing that there's so much more than even what you are reading on the pages, and you are able to expand and see that there's more than just that surface level. Those words do not explain and give you the opportunity to really see how much these characters are gone through, how much they have changed when you're looking at Helena, when you're looking at Cain, and I loved it about them. I also really liked the magic system and the alchemy, and you could tell the research that went in to creating this magic system, and I enjoyed how you had to have this affinity towards a specific metal. It's not like in Mistborn, which a lot of people I feel like are misconstruing. It's an affinity in terms of the weapon that you are getting, and you are able to bond with this weapon more. It'll be lighter if you have affinity towards titanium over copper, and then there's also different layers of the alchemy because you have the Vivimancer, who's able to weave together the body like a surgeon, but also has like used as a healer in Helena's case. But then you also have the Animancer, who's able to control the body as well. I thoroughly enjoyed every single aspect of this book. There was not a single part of it that I really disliked, but I will say when it comes to the way people are talking about this book, it is not a romance. It is not a romance by any means. There is a love story within it, but it is built on the trauma of war and the emotions and the bonds that you create during it. But anybody that says that this is a romance is wrong. It is just a dark fantasy. Heavy on the dark, heavy on the fantasy. I highly recommend checking out. It is worth every single second that you're going to be putting into it. It's just a beautiful, beautiful story. The Dungeons Anarchist Cookbook by Matt Dinneman. This is the third book in the Dungeon Crawler Carl series, and some way, somehow, every single book is just as funny, if not funnier, than the last. I just love reading all these books and how they are getting funnier and funnier with every single one. I'm loving to see the way that the dungeon has been built, and with every single level being so completely different. I'm loving all the monsters that you're getting to see and the random ways that they are going to go about killing, but also the way that you are seeing all these different little facts about them, because it is so random but so funny at the exact same time. Like, I don't know, I would love to spend a day in Matt Dinneman's brain just to be able to figure out how he got to where he got and how he created this, because it is so random in the best ways possible. But I'm loving seeing Donna and Carl and how the two of them have changed and progressed throughout every single book. I'm loving to see how they are creating bonds with other characters, and you are finally getting the chance to meet other characters that you really haven't gotten the chance to see in previous books. It is so much fun, and I cannot wait to dive into the next one. A Memory Called Empire and a Desolation Called Peace. This is the Tex Calonley duology. It is phenomenal. It is so underrated, it's not even funny. I've had these books sitting on my shelf for way too long, and the fact that I hadn't read them was a disservice to myself, and it's a disservice to yourself if you haven't picked them up yet. This follows along Mahita's Mar, who is an ambassador to the Tex Calonley Empire. She gets sent to this intergalactic capital where she ends up following her predecessor, who has been killed. But she realizes that everybody's not quite telling her the truth, because they're saying it's accidental, but it doesn't quite seem accidental to her. You are going to be looking at all the different layers and all the different political schemes and background that you didn't realize, she didn't realize were there. But also I thought it was very interesting the way that the Tex Calonleys interact compared to Mahit and how she is raised, because she was raised on a satellite spaceship. And it was just interesting. I really liked the fact that there was a whole other language. You aren't really seeing the language, but you're seeing the way that people react in their language, because the Tex Calonleys have a very flat affect and they don't really smile with their teeth, and it's considered barbarian if you smile with your teeth, whereas they use their eyes, and they just have this very flat emotional affect to them, which I thought was really interesting. The politics that were in here were so immaculately complex, but also so well thought out, because by the time that you got to the end of the first book and then you start the second book, you're like, whoa, hold up. But in the best way possible. You are going to be looking at colonialism, you are going to be looking at identity, you're looking at the struggle of culture compared to technology and how different cultures react to different things. I just thought it was an incredible read, and it's definitely one that not as many people are picking up, because I don't see this anywhere, and I feel like people should be seeing this absolutely everywhere. I was mesmerized, it was beautiful, it was profound, it was brilliant, it was every single positive thing I could possibly say about it. You should read it. Anderson in Bloom follows along Andy, who is a reclusive ex-Hollywood star who turns into a florist and wants to lead a quiet life. She ends up having her life upturned when her ex ends up showing up in the same small town that she is hidden away in, and decides that she is going to write a tell-all memoir. It is a small town second chance romance that I just had so much fun reading. This comes out in March, and it was just a feel-good romance. I really liked Andy, but I also really liked Nikki, and I loved how much you could tell that the two of them wanted to be together, but they didn't want to expose themselves to all the hardship and the just breakups and just everything that had happened previously. They wanted to remain and keep themselves safe, especially Andy, rather than giving their heart, putting it on their sleeve, and then losing it all over again. I was able to read it in one sitting. It was just really addictive, and it was really beautiful. Plus, I loved flowers, and I loved how Andy knew every single thing about flowers and how all these flowers had different meanings. I just thought that was even more beautiful, just being able to see that little detail of Andy and show how much other people cared when they were willing to put in the effort into creating these floral arrangements that had more than just a pretty flower. It had an actual meaning to it. It was a fairly fast-paced book. I really was able to finish it in one sitting, and I just had a load of fun with it, and it's kind of putting me back in the mood for romance. The Names by Florence Knapp. This was an incredibly unique concept that I thought was executed very well. It follows along the same person, but if their name was 3 separate things, and how their identity changes, their life changes, the people that they are with and the people that are surrounding them change as well. You have Bear, Julian, and Gordon, and you're going to witness 3 different timelines with each of those individual names. And I thought it was so interesting. You're witnessing 3 decades of the same person with 3 separate names, and it was just incredible, but also very much heartbreaking as you watch just how much your name can really impact other people in your life. It was powerfully moving, full of both hope but also despair, and I loved this way more than I was actually expecting to, just because it was very unique and I wasn't quite sure how the concept was actually going to be executed, but I thought Florence Knapp did a phenomenal job, especially considering this was a debut. I plan on reading pretty much anything else that she comes out with, because anything that's going to make me shed a tear is a gold star in my eyes. Lonely Crowds is a debut that follows along Ruth, who is a lonely child, only child, who goes to a Catholic school and ends up befriending a riveting girl named Maria, who is now an orphan and living with her aunt. They both are determined to make it into the New York art scene, but only one of them is able to be successful. This book spans decades as you are watching the 2 of them, their separate lives, and how love, whether reciprocated or not, can truly consume your life. This was a coming of age story that involved friendship, but also what friendship really means and how it can also hinder you in the process. You're going to be witnessing a girl trying to find herself and her path and her identity, but is willing to squash herself and who she can become in hopes of being admired and accepted by the person that she wants most in her life. It is a very intimate and deep story about desire and love, and as much as there was a very poetic nature to the writing, the prose, and the story, I wasn't as big a fan as I thought I was going to be. I really had high hopes for Ruth as a character. I wanted so much for her so badly. But honestly, I think therapy really would have helped her, and she refused to accept herself and was willing to give up parts of herself for another person, which I know a lot of people do, but it felt unrealistic in the way that Ruth was written, and also just how demeaning and horrible Maria actually was, and the fact that nobody else in her life realized that and was willing to help her and try and guide her in the right direction really just also seemed very unrealistic. I also thought the sentence structure was very difficult to follow along with. It felt very choppy and it didn't flow as much as I think it was meant to. It was a very lyrical writing style, but it wasn't done in the seamless way that the lyrical sense of style and writing really is done. It felt like it was trying to be, but it wasn't successful in it. I've seen a lot of people have enjoyed this, and there are certain aspects of the story that I did enjoy, and it's one that I would recommend, but it just wasn't my favorite overall. The Sunlit Man by Brandon Sanderson. This follows a nomad who is always on the run and he cannot stop. He ends up on this planet where sunlight ends up destroying, well, the sun ends up destroying everything, and these people are in spaceships and constantly moving from place to place. He is caught between a ruthless tyrant and those who are trying to rebel, and it becomes a lot more than he was expecting, because now not only is his life, but his soul is also at stake. For this one, I liked it. Don't get me wrong. I really enjoy Brandon Sanderson when it comes to the writing and the worlds that he creates. But I realized very early on that I did not read this in the correct order of the Cosmere, and by the end of it, I ended up spoiling stuff for the Stormlight Archives for myself, which really sucked. I was like, wait, I know what that means. Oh, I know what that means. And then things ended up being told, and I was like, and that is why I know what that means, and I know a lot more than I should. And now I've kind of ruined certain things. My only recommendation for you is make sure that you've at least read the first 4 books in the Stormlight Archive before you decide to read this. Or else you're going to be like me and not trust certain characters in the Stormlight Archive anymore because you know what's going to happen to them. Katabasis by R.F. Kuang. This follows along Alice and Peter, who descend into hell in an attempt to recover the soul of their professor, so that way they are able to get letters of recommendation for them to be able to graduate. It's difficult for me to say this because I love R.F. Kuang so much. It just wasn't my favorite read by her. There was a lot of potential. I loved the world building. I thought it was absolutely incredible when you were looking at hell and just how much hell becomes who the person that's going and descending into it really is. The reflection of hell is based on the person that is there. And so you're going to be seeing, because Alice and Peter are academics, an academic side. So you're going to be seeing a college campus, the library, and all different sides based on and related to academics. And I thought that was really interesting, and I loved that. And I really loved how every single other person that was in hell was also related to academics, and it also related back to their lives. I just thought that was a very unique side and twist to hell. The downside of this, I thought, was the magic system. The magic system I don't think was extrapolated on enough. I thought that you were told about the magic, but then you weren't actually told about the magic. You were like, the magic exists, but that's all you were told. And you're like, okay, but how does the magic exist? And you're like, I'm not gonna tell you. And you're like, I really wish you would. Also, I didn't really like how the paradoxes and laws were just regurgitation. That's exactly what it felt like. They were like, this paradox means this, and that's what it did. And you're like, oh, but like, can I really see, or are you just going to tell me? And they're like, we're just gonna tell you. And that kind of really took me out of the story. I thought Alice was a great character, and I also thought Peter was a great foil for Alice. And I loved getting to see the two of them expand on their relationship as they are both dealing with hell in their own manner. Alice was a very unlikable character at the beginning because her life revolved around academics and nobody could get in the way of it. But Peter really just wanted the best for her, and as you were slowly getting to know Peter and his side of everything, you begin to really empathize for him. You are not just sympathizing for him, you are empathizing. I think a lot of people, if you really like R of Kwong, are going to enjoy this. If you're an academic, I think you are going to enjoy this. But if you've been on the fence about R of Kwong, I really don't think you will. And if you don't like R of Kwong, I don't think you're gonna like this one either. But it was okay. I would still recommend it. It was a great dark academia, perfect for fall, but it just wasn't my favorite. Her Wicked Roots by Tanya Pell. This follows along Cordelia, who is in search of her brother who has gone missing. She follows his trail and ends up at a supposedly haunted mansion where the eccentric Lady Evangeline, who is a botanist, ends up taking her in and employs her. Cordelia soon meets Lady Evangeline's daughters, Prim and Briar, and finds out that there is a lot more to who they are and what is happening at their grounds than she was told and that she could imagine. I thought this was really interesting. It is a mix of fantasy and also mystery kind of wrapped into one. I thought it was interesting just trying to figure out what was happening. I do think that the twist was pretty easy to figure out and point out. However, I still thoroughly enjoyed it and wanted to continue to read just because I wanted to see how the relationships would change between these characters. There is a sapphic romance in this, but it is not the priority of the story. It is it is a very little subplot, but it is still there, which is part of why I read it. I did enjoy it. I liked seeing the botany, and I liked seeing the little twists and how these characters are trying to untangle and unravel everything that's happening around them without letting somebody else know at the same time. I also thought the ending was very suspicious in the best way possible. I do think that this is going to remain a standalone, and it can remain a standalone. I just thought it was suspicious. I was like, I saw what you did there, and I'm not going to spoil anything, so you're going to have to read to find out what I mean. The Eye on the Silver Sea by Tasha Suri takes place on an island where incarnates rule. They are guided by the stories that are created around them, and there is one queen who is in charge of making sure all the incarnates follow their supposed stories. This story within a story follows along a knight and a witch who are destined to fall in love with each other and end their relationship in heartbreak, ruin, and death. But they decide that maybe they don't want that designated story to be what takes place, and they decide that they're going to change the ending and do whatever it takes, no matter who, what breaks in the process. I really loved it. It was very enthralling. It was vivid, picturesque, just getting that fairy tale feel with all these stories, but having that darker undertones with it. I really loved the doom romance aspect of it and thought it was very well done. I also enjoyed your two main characters and just how witty and funny they were looking at the two of them because they were polar opposites in the best way possible, and you could just feel that they were foils for each other and gradually watching their love grow together. It was so fantastic, and it makes me really want to read more of Tasha Suri's books moving forward, so that's what I'm going to do. I highly recommend it. It is a standalone, which makes it even better because you can just one and done this, but it's also going to be a book that's going to stick with you for a very long time. The Everlasting by Alex E. Harrow. If you loved The Seven Deaths of a State and wanted more from those 30 pages, but you weren't getting more, you were going to feel it in this book. I loved it so much. It follows along a lady knight who ends up creating a legend, really guides this dominion and empire, and the scholar who falls in love with her and is willing to do anything to make sure that she follows her path, even if it hurts and breaks him and her in the process. It was a genre-bending novel, as you are going to be looking at a fantasy aspect with knights, dragons, magic, but you are also going to have sci-fi when it comes to time travel. It was just so enjoyable. It was picturesque, it was vivid, it was beautiful, poignant, lyrical, every single thing that I could possibly say positive about it, I'm going to say regarding this story. When it comes to the prose, it is absolutely lush, and you are going to feel like you are falling into a bed of flowers. There is going to be heartbreak, romance, love, despair, so much and so little within these pages. I wish it was longer just so that way I could live in this world and fall in love with these characters even more than I already did. If you can't guess, I gave it 5 stars. I just love this so much, and I hope everybody picks it up in October because that's when it's coming out. Unbound by Michael R. Miller is the second book in the Songs of Chaos series. This was a reread for me because the new book, the 4th book, Reckoning, ended up coming out this month, and I wanted to reread the second book just so that way I could go into the 3rd, because the cliffhanger and the way that this book was leading up, I knew that I wouldn't be prepared to continue on until I had another book, because I wouldn't want this world to end. This falls along Holt Cook, who is the son of a cook, but he dreams of becoming a dragon rider. When he ends up stealing an egg of a dragon that was deemed unworthy, he becomes the dragon rider he never thought he would be. But also, there was a lot more to becoming a dragon rider than he was expecting. In the second book, you are finally getting the chance to see these characters thrive, and the world upon what you've got in Ascendant is built, and you get to see so much more in terms of the politics, because the politics were really politicking in this book, but you were also seeing how these characters are growing up, and you really get to see and feel that. The first book very much felt YA, but going back and reading this book really solidified that this isn't a YA book for me, and I really don't feel like it should be categorized into that just because Holt is younger. But when you're looking at the themes and you're looking at how dark this book can actually become, I wouldn't classify it as YA. I think Michael R. Miller does a great job when it comes to the magic system and the world that he creates. I liked how when it came to the dragons specifically, they just didn't have powers, and there's different factions of dragons, but when it comes to the powers that they have, the writer has to help. They have to go in and forge and clean the core of the dragon so that way they are able to work to their fullest potential. I also really just love Holt and Ash so much. Ash is one of my favorite companions that has ever been written, and he loves Holt, and you can feel the love falling off the pages. It was just a great story, and I'm so ready to continue this series. The Princess Knight by Kate Jacobs. This is a fantasy debut that comes out this month, and guys, it was so good. It is Legally Blonde but medieval knights, and it was a great time. Clea and Domhnall are set to get married, form an alliance between their 2 neighboring kingdoms, but Domhnall decides that he's not going to do that. He ends up going to this military academy, and Clea decides she's gonna follow because she is a powerful woman and she can do that. Ronan, who is a warrior, says he has no time for this golden-haired princess who decides to waltz on in here, but he ends up maybe changing his mind. There is a war that is looming, and nothing is going to stand in its way. People are going to be truly put to the test with their skills and their heart. This was so much fun. As I said, it is a Legally Blonde-esque medieval romance, and it was just a joy. I loved Clea. She was so funny in a non-intentionally funny way, just because she was like, no, I can do that, and then she's like, oh wait, no, maybe I can't. It was just very interesting to see her and the progress and the progression that she had within herself and finding who she really is, what she wants for herself, for her future, but also seeing the impact that she has on the characters around her, because nobody took her seriously. Everybody thought she was just a blonde little princess that couldn't do anything, and she proved everybody wrong, and I loved it for her so much. You're going to see the mental, physical, and emotional strength that she is able to get throughout the pages, and it was just a beautiful story to be able to watch and see that for her. It was rich with Irish folklore and history as well when it came to the names, when it came to the world, and I just thought that was an additional part that I really thought was enjoyable. I highly recommend you guys check it out just because it was really good. And also, if you follow me on Instagram, there may or may not be a giveaway for a signed finished copy available soon. The Tortoise's Tale by Kendra Coulter. This is a debut that follows along a sentient tortoise with many different names as you span a whole century watching this tortoise grow up and the people that grows up around them. A giant tortoise lives on an exclusive estate in Southern California where she becomes an observer of the humans around her. She ends up learning all of these different humans' nuances, but also learns about herself in the process. She ends up gaining friendships with people she wasn't expecting and finding so much love with the people that are surrounding her. You are getting the chance to witness a human's journey and life throughout the eyes of this giant tortoise. You are also watching her fall in love with music and just how music can impact so many other people and how the world doesn't stop at somebody's doorstep. If you are a fan of remarkably bright creatures, I definitely think you would enjoy this one. I really loved it. I love getting the chance to live in a sentient animal's mind and getting to witness human interactions from their perspective. It's always so much fun, so wholesome, and just enjoyable in a different aspect. I feel like you're able to really be brought down to earth when reading books like this. Overall, it was enjoyable. There were a couple of critiques that I had about it. I felt like sometimes it was very detailed heavy and not the correct ways. I understand you have a sentient tortoise, it's not like they can just speak to everybody, but the details really bogged down the story and it slowed it down in certain places. I also thought another part, which I knew was important because the tortoise really liked music, but I thought it was weird that some way, somehow, this tortoise and this estate had every single famous musician you could possibly imagine. It was just very odd. It was just an odd little touch that I didn't necessarily feel like was actually important to the story and probably could have been removed, and it wouldn't have made or break it. Because the first time getting to see Stevie Nicks I thought was really cool. But then you're also seeing it again with Billy Joel, and it's basically the exact same storyline repeated, just a different artist. Wasn't a fan. Overall, I still thought it was very heartwarming, and I really think people would enjoy it. As I said, if you liked Remarkably Bright Creatures, I think you'd like this one. Anji Kills a King follows along Anji, who is a laundry servant in a palace and hates the king. One day she decides that she is going to murder the king, and now she is on the run. But the menagerie of mercenaries are hot on her tail and are all determined to take her in to receive the bounty on her head. Hawk is the first person to find Anji and beats out her fellow bounty hunters, deciding to keep Anji alive and take her in to get the bounty herself. With the rest of the menagerie hot on their tail, an alliance is formed, tenuous as it is, as Anji's faith is really put to the test. Ultimately, I would say this is a maybe, because I rated it 3.5 stars, but the issue that I had most with it was Anji and her character and her inability to shut up. If she just took a moment and actually stopped talking when they said to stop talking, she would be a lot better of a character. But she was wholeheartedly unsufferable that there was never a point in the story that I liked her. I don't think she was meant to be liked. However, you thought she was growing up and then she never did. Even though there were so many different times where Hawk's like, hey, shut up, people are coming, and she's like, how about I just keep talking? And you're like, no, just zip your lips, put a gag in it. That's all I was asking for. And honestly, because of that, that was really what docked this book down. Because I thought the world building was interesting. I really liked the foundation that was built in terms of the politics and the fact that you have this upheaval and you are seeing this religious sect that is now vying for power, and because of the fact that the king is dead, is claiming this power. So I thought that was interesting, the fact that you get that face, just a little bit of your toes dipped in seeing that. And then I really liked the magic and how there wasn't exactly magic per se, but you can feel that it is there in the world. But really, it was Anji's character and how much I disliked her that really brought this down. If she was a little bit more thoughtful and actually, I don't know, listened, just shut her chat for a second, I think it would have been better. The Summer War by Naomi Novik falls along Celia, who finds out that she has magic when she curses her brother with angry, childish words, hoping that he is never able to find love. Her older brother is now forced to wander the earth, seeking only fame and glory, though he desires love because of the curse that Celia put on him. But she is determined to figure out a way to undo this prophecy. There's also a summer war going on between the immortal beings and their mortal neighbors, and Celia realizes maybe the solution is found within this war. I really love Naomi Novik's writing. I really loved how this one felt like a very lush, beautiful story inside a story. It feels like a bedtime story. Sorry, I've said story like 10 times in the last 3 seconds, but it really does. I just really love the way her writing is so versatile and you never know what to expect. And this time you are going to have that light, airy, lush, beautiful, lyrical, vivid prose, and it's even wrapped up in such a short amount of pages. But it was still done so well that you have a full story with it. The Mad Sisters of Esi follows along 2 sisters who live in the Whale of Babel, and they explore the never-ending caverns that's within. When one day one sister decides that the whale is not enough and she wants more of an adventure, she leaves and starts exploring and adventuring around the world, but is never able to find her way back home. Mayang is on a journey to find the missing Great Wisa, and on her journey, she is able to uncover the mystery behind the Mad Sisters of Esi. There were so many different layers to this story that I wasn't expecting, and the fact that you had multiple different perspectives and you also had different journeys that every single person was going on. I liked the hop between history. I liked the ghosts and the shape-shifting islands. There were just so many different aspects for you to fall in love with when it came to the world, when it came to the story within a story, and you were watching the mystery begin to slowly unravel. I had guesses and I was headed in the right direction, but I wasn't quite there. It was still so beautiful. I wasn't expecting also to end up getting emotional while listening to this, and I fell in love with the sisters and their love for each other, but also the tender love that everybody had for each other, whether they wanted to or not. There was just so many beautiful aspects of this story that I would highly, highly recommend. What Hunger follows along Rani in the summer before high school, where she spends her days just kind of lazing around, but right before the end of summer, her world comes crashing down around her when her brother ends up passing in a fatal car accident. This ends up beginning her new journey into finding herself and finding out what really sustains her. Ronnie ends up having to deal with the trauma of both losing her brother and also being sexually assaulted, and the female rage that comes along with it. It is an emotionally perilous journey that she ends up trying to cope with in any way she deems fit, which may or may not involve raw meat. I said last month that I wasn't the biggest fan of cannibalism, and I still stand by that, but I did enjoy this book a lot more than I liked The Lamb. I don't feel like it was as graphic, which was part of why I enjoyed it more. I thought it was very interesting when you were looking at the emotional turmoil that Ronnie is going through and the way that her family and the culture that she grew up in is expecting her to deal with certain responses different ways. How her family and her parents specifically are dealing with grief and trauma differently than she is, but how they're expecting her to mimic them and deal with it the same way they are. There's so much pent up female rage within Ronnie, and I loved getting to see that side of her. I did think that going to the extent of cannibalism may or may not have been too far, but that's just my personal opinion. If you want to resort to cannibalism after you've been sexually assaulted, by all means, go for it. It was a book about bonding over trauma, mother-daughter relationships, finding oneself, but also just so much more. So if you like cannibalism, I think you might enjoy this. But if you also like female rage, I definitely think you're going to enjoy this. The Way of Kings and Prophets by Shauna Lawless. Yes, please do read this book. guys. It is the second book in the Gale Song trilogy, and let me tell you, this trilogy is so underrated. It is a historical fantasy set in Ireland, and you have this war, and you see both sides of the war, but also there's a war within a war, because there's a physical war and the vie for control over Ireland and the kings and the queens of it, but there's also a magical war going on between two different sides. A side that thought that the Fomorians were all dead, but then they actually aren't, and it was just so interesting. But the best part about this is just how well written it actually is, because you are going to be seeing both sides of the story, and you're going to be rooting for each side depending on whose chapter you're on. You are seeing female rage and the way that females are treated during this time period and how they aren't respected, even though sometimes they do have a very good idea and they should be. But you are also going to be watching just how well loved and caring other characters are, and they want the absolute best for everyone, even if it means hurting themselves and destroying themselves in the process. I love Sean Lawless's writing. It is a very much slower paced novel, but getting the chance to realize and see and witness every single detail, how it is so important, and you are getting to be able to watch how every single piece of these battles and these characters and the little tidbits and breadcrumbs that were sprinkled are beginning to work together to create an even larger story. Sunward by William Alexander follows along Captain Tova, who is a courier but is only second class and refuses to ever be first class. Her entire family is based in politics, but she decides that she is not going to go that route, and in so becoming a courier ends up working with baby AI bots, and basically is their mother, helping raise them during this very important period of time as they are slowly beginning to transition into themselves. Her current protege is Agatha, and on their return journey they find a spaceship, and it takes them on a journey they weren't expecting that also includes an assassin and takes them truly across the solar system. During their escape, Agatha becomes scattered and fractured, and now Tova is on a mission to gather up all of her students in an attempt to revive Agatha to who she once was. But this journey ends up leading her in a way and on a path that she wasn't expecting, and there's so much more going on under the surface that she didn't realize and doesn't quite want to be a part of, yet was already embedded in anyway. You're going to be looking at found family and just how important, but you can also feel the love that all these characters have for one another. You're going to be going on a true journey across the solar system as you are witnessing politics and the breaking of factions, but also the breaking of one's self in an attempt to save other people that they care about. You're looking at trust versus mistrust, the community coming together, and how AI can either lead or destroy everything around it. It was very interesting and something I enjoyed a lot more than I was expecting to. I had my eyes set on this book, but I wasn't expecting to feel as deeply connected with these characters in such a short amount of time. This is supposed to be a standalone, but the ending was very ambiguous, and I have high hopes that we will see another future side of this, because I have a lot of questions and I would really appreciate answers. I don't know if we're ever going to get them, and a part of me is kind of grateful that we're not going to get them, just kind of leaving it open-ended and letting me think of a happily ever after, which I do enjoy. September was an absolutely fantastic month, and I have quite a few books lined up in October that I'm really excited about, and I'm hoping that I'll be able to stick to my TBR. I'll be honest, I'm not going to tell you guys, because I know if I tell you what my October TBR is and then you see what I've read in October, you'll be like, those aren't the same books, because I am very much a mood reader. But I'm still so excited for what October is going to bring, and if there's going to be any new favorites, 5-star reads, and just books that I can recommend to you guys. Thank you so much for sticking around, listening to me chat your ear off, and just talking with me about books, and I will see you guys next week. Also, thanks for dealing with the fact that the angle changed like 10 times because my camera kept overheating. I apologize, but I appreciate you. See you next week.